Shedeur Sanders stepped on the practice field with Jeudy lined up wide. And in that moment, everything changed. After a season clouded by injuries and relentless doubt, Sanders delivered a practice performance that stopped teammates and reporters in their tracks. His throws were tight, precise, and fast, each one radiating confidence. What stood out wasn't just his arm strength. It was his poise. This wasn't a player hanging on to potential. It was someone finally stepping into it. Critics had spent months questioning his NFL readiness. On this day, Sanders answered without saying a word.
If you're into the real story and all the messy twists they don't show on highlight reels, go ahead and subscribe. And if you're sticking around to see how this Browns QB chaos plays out, you should definitely be subscribed.
The Browns have reached a critical crossroads, and Sanders is no longer a question mark. He's a contender. His emergence has shifted the energy within the quarterback room, forcing a reevaluation of leadership and talent. In a team weighed down by internal dysfunction and coaching misfires, Sanders' control and growth are more than just a story of personal redemption. They may be the key to turning around a fractured season. 2. Shedeur Sanders just lit up the practice field, throwing absolute lasers to Jeudy. And yes, everyone saw it. Everyone except, apparently, the people who should be paying the closest attention. Because while Sanders was out there putting on a clinic, sharp, fast, confident throws that screamed NFL ready, the buzz wasn't coming from the coaching staff. It was from teammates, reporters, and stunned onlookers who weren't expecting that level of dominance. Let's be clear, this wasn't just a decent day at practice. It was the kind of performance that makes you pause. The chemistry with Jeudy, immediate. The footwork, polished. The command of the pocket, unshakable. It was exactly the kind of showing that should silence a lot of the noise he's been hearing for the past year. And yet, the silence around him, deafening. It wasn't long ago that people were doubting whether Shedeur was even cut out for the NFL. Injury setbacks, media scrutiny, and nonstop criticism painted him as a question mark. A player with potential, sure, but maybe not ready. But now, he's not just ready. He's quietly demanding the conversation be shifted. Because if you've been following the Browns lately, you know this isn't a team with its quarterback situation locked down. The losses have been stacking. The game plans? Inconsistent. And the coaching staff? Let's just say supportive isn't the word people are using, especially when it comes to Shedeur. In fact, head coach Kevin Stefanski's attitude towards Sanders has been borderline cold. Publicly, Stefanski has distanced himself, even admitting Sanders hasn't been a focus. That might have made sense before this recent string of practices. But now it feels like stubbornness. Because anyone watching that session with Jeudy saw a quarterback completely in control, making NFL-level throws and keeping his cool under pressure. This wasn't just about physical talent, either. Shedeur's mental game has clearly evolved. He's been talking more openly about leadership, about knowing when to be lighthearted and when to lock in, about balancing the pressure, the expectations, and the noise. He knows the criticisms, people questioning his toughness, his maturity, his hype. And instead of firing back, he's just leveled up. He's actively shifting his mindset, focusing on positivity, on team growth, on accountability. That's not just media training. That's growth. The kind of growth you usually don't see until a few seasons in. And here he is, dealing with all this chaos, and still finding ways to lead. But let's talk about the elephant in the room, the coaching dynamic. Or, more accurately, the lack of one. Stefanski's leadership, or what's passing for it lately, has come under fire. The quarterback room feels more like a Cold War than a support system. Sanders shows up, puts in the work, delivers a statement at practice, and gets what? Vague press conferences and deflection. Stefanski's press appearances are basically a masterclass in how to avoid saying someone's name. And fans have noticed. You've got reporters asking direct questions, and Stefanski talking in circles. No shout-outs, no acknowledgement, no momentum. And it's not just Stefanski. The whole Browns organization feels like it's running on mixed messages. They're losing key games. They're underperforming with solid talent. And in the middle of that, they've got a quarterback quietly climbing, getting sharper, stronger, more composed, and they're acting like it's not happening. let's talk about that media silence too. Because it's not just the coaching staff pretending not to notice. Analysts like Tommy Ree somehow always manage to talk around Sanders. They'll give breakdowns, excuses, praise for other QBs, but Sanders' name never comes up. Convenient, right? And fans are done with it. They see what's happening. They see the improvement. They see the work. And they're asking the obvious question, why is everyone so reluctant to give Shedeur credit? Because if another young quarterback showed that kind of command at practice, after months of doubt and injuries, the media would be all over it. The NFL world lives for redemption arcs. But when it's Sanders, the conversation suddenly dries up. It's a pattern, and it's getting harder to ignore. What's even more frustrating is how stark the contrast is. Sanders, calm and locked in. Stefanski, cold and distant. One's taking accountability. The other's dodging it. The leadership energy couldn't be more opposite, and it's feeding into an atmosphere that just feels off. Players are picking up on it. The locker room can be blind to this imbalance. When someone's playing well and getting ghosted by the coaches and the media, it creates tension, it breeds confusion, and it undermines what's supposed to be a team-first culture. Which brings us to the big question, where does this leave the Browns? They're not in a position to play favorites. They've been struggling, losing key moments and under-delivering. And here's a quarterback giving them every reason to pivot, showing growth, leadership, physical talent. And they're still acting like he's not in the room. If the coaching staff keeps clinging to the status quo, they're going to lose more than just games. They're going to lose the locker room, the fan base, the momentum. This isn't just about one player anymore. It's about whether the team has the guts to change when change is staring them in the face. Shedeur's performance should have been a turning point, a moment where the conversation shifted. Instead, it's just exposed the cracks, the biases, the disconnect. And while he keeps growing, it's clear the people around him need to catch up or step aside. So now, it's not a matter of if Sanders is ready. It's whether the Browns are. Let us know in the comments. Do you think Shedeur Sanders should start against the Ravens? And what's really going on with Stefanski's radio silence? Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more breakdowns on the chaos behind the headlines. See you in the next meltdown. Because here's the thing. When a player steps up the way Shedeur Sanders just did, you're supposed to notice. You're supposed to lean in, not look away. But right now, the Browns coaching staff is doing the football equivalent of checking their phones during a house fire. And the fire? It's burning in the quarterback room. The Browns are at a crossroads, and no one seems willing to admit it. You got Sanders showing tangible progress, actual, measurable growth, on and off the field, and not just in private film sessions or off-season fluff pieces. We're talking in practice, in front of witnesses, with NFL-level receivers like Jeudy, showing off timing, velocity, and vision like a seasoned pro. And yet crickets. Still no signs of the coaching staff publicly acknowledging what's happening. If this were any other young quarterback lighting it up during a tense week of preparation before a critical matchup, they'd be plastered across every press conference quote. So proud of his development. He's putting in the work. He's giving us something to think about. But with Shedeur, it's all strategic silence. Why? What's the actual reason behind the cold shoulder? Is it politics? Favoritism? Fear of being wrong about earlier decisions? Because let's not forget, Stefanski already made it clear early in the season that Sanders wasn't his focus. And in NFL speak, that's just a polite way of saying, I've already made my mind up. Which, sure, maybe that was the case back when Sanders was rehabbing and trying to find his footing. But now, there's no excuse. What he's doing in practice demands attention. And ignoring it isn't just tone deaf, it's reckless. And fans know it. They can see the dissonance. It's hard to miss. You got a franchise struggling to stay afloat, and one of its most promising assets is being openly sidelined by leadership. The same leadership that hasn't exactly been delivering W's lately. This kind of situation doesn't stay internal for long. The locker room sees it. The press sees it. And most importantly, the fan base feels it. Every time Stefanski avoids saying Sanders' name, it lands like a subtle jab. Every time analysts pivot away from giving him credit, it becomes more obvious. There's a refusal to validate the progress. And that's what really stings. Because this isn't just about one practice. It's not just about a few good throws. This is about a player fighting uphill through injury, criticism, and an absurd level of scrutiny, and still showing up stronger, still delivering, still leading. And that matters. That should matter. Shedeur's talking openly about the importance of mental strength now, and not in some shallow, PR-approved way. He's talking about the hard parts, the media dragging him, the public questioning his toughness, the weight of the hype, and how he's learned to tune it out. He's talked about owning the role of a leader, even when the people above him haven't exactly handed him the keys. That's rare. That's the stuff you usually see years into someone's NFL journey, after they've already burned out or been humbled. But here he is, in the eye of the storm, holding himself accountable, saying, yeah, I've had to mature. I've had to balance the fun and the focus. I've had to grow. And while he's doing all that, Stefanski's standing at a podium, giving the media nothing. It's no wonder fans are frustrated. You've got a head coach who can barely bring himself to acknowledge the most improved guy in the room. And you've got a player quietly doing everything right, without the backing of the people who should be championing him. What message does that send to the rest of the team? Because let's be real, locker rooms are built on trust and fairness. If players feel like effort doesn't matter, or that the coach plays favorites, or that growth gets ignored in favor of the plan, it breeds resentment. And resentment kills momentum. The Browns don't have the luxury to be this dysfunctional right now. Their recent losses have made that crystal clear. The game planning's been shaky. Execution's inconsistent. And morale? Let's just say it's not peaking. Which is why Shedeur's emergence should have been a lifeline, a spark, something to rally around. Instead, it's being treated like a distraction, like an inconvenience. The Browns aren't just brushing off a player. They're brushing off a shift, a potential pivot. And that's dangerous. Because how many times has a franchise ignored a rising star out of pride, only to watch that player thrive somewhere else? You can feel it building, this tension between where the team could go if it leaned into change and where it's stuck because of leadership inertia. And the longer the coaching staff refuses to adapt, the more they risk losing control of the narrative and the locker room. And don't think the media's silence isn't strategic either. Analysts like Tommy avoiding Sanders' name, that's not an accident. That's calculated. Because once they acknowledge his progress, once they admit he's turning a corner, they have to reckon with why they weren't on board earlier, why they wrote him off, why they kept making excuses for less impressive QBs while pretending Shedeur didn't exist. And let's be honest, the double standard is glaring. Some quarterbacks are allowed to have off games, off weeks, even off seasons, and still get talked about as the future. But Shedeur? One bad moment, and he's not ready. One injury, and he can't take the hits. One wrong quote, and it's immature. But now that he's doing everything right, on the field, in the media, in the locker room, there's still no credit? At some point, you have to call it what it is. A reluctance to embrace change, a fear of being wrong, a stubborn loyalty to the idea of leadership rather than the reality of it. And while the coaching staff clings to that, they're missing what's happening right in front of them. Sanders isn't waiting for validation. He's taking the steps. And the leadership? He's already doing it. Supporting teammates. Taking criticism in stride. Elevating his play under pressure. Staying calm. Staying sharp. That's what a quarterback is. So if the Browns want to keep pretending this isn't happening, fine. But don't act surprised when fans start turning. When the locker room gets colder. When the tension spills into headlines. Because this isn't sustainable. You can't ask your team to give 100% when you're only acknowledging 80% of the room. And if they go into this Ravens game without at least considering Sanders, if they continue to ignore what he's showing them every single day in practice, then they're not just risking a loss on the scoreboard. They're risking a loss of credibility. Fans aren't dumb. They see the disconnect. They know when a player is being frozen out. And they will start asking harder questions if this keeps going. At some point, the Browns have to decide, are they going to reward growth and talent? Or are they going to bury it under old loyalties and tired narratives? Because Shedeur Sanders is making it really hard to keep pretending he's not ready. Because here's what no one seems to be saying out loud. If Shedeur Sanders was anyone else, if he'd come from a different background, or maybe didn't carry the last name Sanders, would this conversation even be happening? Or would he already be QB1? At a certain point, the pattern is too obvious to ignore. He plays well, the media avoids it. He gets injured, suddenly he's fragile. He dominates practice with NFL-caliber throws. Stefanski says nothing. Over and over again, he steps up, and every time, the people in charge act like they lost their voice. And let's not sugarcoat this either. Stefanski's approach to leadership is under a full-on microscope now. His refusal to even say Sanders' name during press conferences? That's not just weird, it's telling. You don't have to be a body language expert to catch the shade. There's a clear avoidance happening. And it's not just the fans noticing anymore. Teammates are watching. Reporters are raising eyebrows. The tension is thick. This isn't just about football anymore. It's about credibility. Because when your coach can't give a rising player basic acknowledgement, it sends a message, and not a good one. It says, you can do everything right and still get ignored. And that's a dangerous precedent to set, especially in a locker room full of players busting their ass for snaps, for recognition, for respect. And what's worse, this kind of environment doesn't just silence players. It slowly chips away at them. One day it's your name being skipped. The next, it's your reps, then your opportunities. And before you know it, you're watching from the sidelines while the guy ahead of you gets excuse after excuse handed him on a silver platter. And speaking of excuses, can we talk about the ones other quarterbacks on this roster get? Missed reads? Learning curve. Turnovers? Just part of the development. Bad leadership? He's still finding his voice. But when Sanders got hurt, it was, maybe he's not built for this. When he smiled too much in interviews, he's not serious enough. When he posted on social media, he's distracted. It's exhausting. The double standard is real, and fans are fed up because what's happening here isn't just selective criticism. It's selective silence. And when the silence only applies to one guy, it's no longer subtle. And that silence, it's louder than anything Stefanski has said in months. Let's be honest. This isn't just about Shedeur proving himself. He has. It's about the people in charge refusing to adapt to reality. It's about a coaching staff trying to control a narrative that's already crumbling. Because no matter how much they try to downplay it, the footage from practice doesn't lie. The connections he's building with top-tier receivers? Real. The velocity on his throws? Real. The way he handles pressure in the pocket? Real. What's not real? The excuses being made to keep him in the background. And it's not like the Browns are riding some massive win streak here. They're not. They're stumbling through a season filled with misfires and missed opportunities. They need answers. They need change. And instead of embracing the one player who's showing growth, leadership, and performance, they're gaslighting everyone into pretending it's not happening. But you know who isn't pretending? The fans. The ones watching every presser. The ones dissecting every practice clip. The ones who see the potential and wonder why no one on the staff is brave enough to acknowledge it. They're not buying the spin anymore. Not when Sanders is checking every box and still being treated like a backup character in his own story. And now, the pressure isn't on Shedeur. It's on the coaches. Because every game they lose, every drive that stalls, every moment where leadership fails on the field, it all points back to one question. Why aren't you giving the kid a chance? And it's not just a question of fairness anymore. It's about strategy. If you're losing games anyway, why not give the player who's showing the most promise a shot? Why stick with a system that's clearly not working? At this point, it's not even bold, it's logical. And yet, the Browns seem committed to riding this out like it's 2021, and the plan is still working. Spoiler alert, it's not. This is a franchise teetering between progress and regression. And right now, leadership is leaning hard into regression. And for what? Ego? Fear of being wrong? A reluctance to change course mid-season? Whatever the reason, the cost is mounting. In Shedeur, he's doing everything but complain. He's focused. He's steady. He's learning. He's leading. And still, they won't look his way. So how long before the locker? Room starts asking the same questions the fans are asking. How long before the receivers, who've been catching bullets from him in practice, start wondering why those same balls aren't flying during game time? How long before the trust fractures completely? Because this kind of tension doesn't stay buried. Not in a league where everything leaks. Not in a city where fans live and breathe every snap. Not when your quarterback's name is being scrubbed from every highlight conversation like it's an inconvenience. It's not sustainable. And everyone knows it. Eventually, something has to give. Either the coaching staff pulls their head out of the sand and faces what's happening, or they keep doubling down on the status quo until the bottom fully falls out. But here's what they should know. The longer they wait, the worse it gets. Because every week that goes by without recognizing Sanders' growth, that's another week of lost momentum. Another week where players start to second-guess leadership. Another week where fans lose a little more faith. And when it's time to clean house, because let's be real, it's coming, guess who they're going to blame? Not the guy making throws. Not the guy staying calm in the storm. Not the guy proving he's ready. They'll blame the ones who ignored him. They'll blame the ones who had a leader in their building and chose to look away. So yeah, the ball is in their court, but the clock's ticking. And Shedeur Sanders? He's already running the 2-minute drill. Let us know in the comments. Do you think the Browns coaching staff is making a huge mistake? Are they holding Sanders back on purpose? Or are they just completely out of touch with what's happening? Drop your takes. Hit like if you're as over the silence as we are. And subscribe if you're here for the full behind-the-scenes fallout. This isn't just football. It's a front row seat to a leadership breakdown. Stay tuned.